are more than 100 unique styles of beer, each with their own set of ingredients, process, guidelines, history, and experience. If you're a beer lover, an industry leader, or somewhere in between, a better knowledge of beer style will improve your life and your work.
Welcome to A Sense of Beer Style, essential beer style training for those who want to lead in food and beverage. I'm Julia Herz.
And I'm Jeremy Storton.
We're advanced Cicerones, beer judges, home brewers, and we're excited to guide you through the vast and wonderful world of beer styles.
Welcome back to the Sense of Beer Style. Welcome back all of our sobs, as Julie says, our sobs, not our snobs. We are a crew that takes our beer seriously. We are a crew who loves to learn. We love the cultural aspects of it, but we're very mellow about it too. That's the way I define us as being sobs. But today we're going to talk about yet another quote unquote historical beer style, the Lichtenhainer. This one is a unicorn. I have found two out in the wild. And I'm sure there are more, and I haven't been specifically looking, but they are just wonderful beers. Quick story, I first came across this in Bend, Oregon. As luck would have it, I stepped into one of the breweries that I absolutely love, and they had just brewed this beer for a smoke fest. And I'm sure a lot of people were just brewing Märzen, Rauch, and other things, and they brewed a Lichtenhainer, and I just happened to get a taste of it. And previously, when I thought of a smoky, sour beer, I thought, I don't know, right? Yeah, Julia's kind of shaking her head. I don't know about that. In the name of science, I'm willing to try it, but I'm already a skeptic, to be perfectly frank and honest. But when I tried this beer for the first time, and just the way that it was so balanced and so nuanced and so it didn't smack you over the nose with sourness or smoke. It was actually lovely. It finally made sense that of course these go together. It was incredible. And we'll talk more about that. What I ate with it at the end. Everything was just perfect, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm a raging fan of Lichtenheiners now. But the Lichtenhainer is a German sour smoked beer. But Julia, let's talk about the ingredients. What makes it sour and smoky?
So imagine you're in central Germany. It's the early 1800s, and there hasn't been this amazing way to do direct fire kilning malt yet. It hasn't been invented. So how do people dry out the malt? They do it over a fire. They basically smoke dry it, right? They use flame, direct fire instead of indirect fire. And so that's the smoked barley malt piece of this sour, smoked, low gravity beer. You also have wheat is such a big aspect in Germany of so many of the early styles, right? The wheat, malted wheat in this style, right, can be 30 to 50%. It's really hard to find beers that might ever be made with more than that, because you will have a stuck mash is the notion, where you literally have so much wheat coagulating together you can't get it to drain and give you extract. I do know a few brewers who have done it, 100% wheat malt beers, but we don't need to get off track on that. Just know that this style, the Lichtenhainer, has 30 to 50%, and then smoked barley as well is a component. Top fermenting yeast always means ale yeast. And then that lactose is also going to be indicative of the older historical ways of brewing. It wasn't always contamination free. Contamination is not a negative thing, because lactose will bring flavor to the equation. So fun strata for a beer that's not very big in alcohol, extremely sessionable, but going to have a lot of complexity. Some might not have the wheat aspect in your historical recreations, so it might be all barley malt. But I would say for an ode to the historical, you're gonna also want to ferment with wheat.
Yeah, and anyone who brews at home or brews commercially, if you get a stuck mash, that is a very, very, very bad day. That is a pain to deal with. Anyway, let's talk about the appearance. Now, I'm going to talk about what the appearance should be according to the BJCP, and if for anyone who's watching, I'll show you this example that I have of what this one's turned out, and they're kind of opposite. The guidelines talk about a beer that has this tall off-white head. It's rocky, it's foamy, it's chunky, and it's very persistent. When I poured this glass, and I tried to show it on camera for those of you watching, but if you're listening, I'll just tell you, I poured it. It was a very light kind of a champagne type of bubbles, and it dispersed immediately. I watched it drop within seconds, and now it's gone, except for a little foamy ring around the collar. Um, it- it- Either way, it's still going to be a delicious beer. And either way, it's still a rare bird, so enjoy it. But what we're looking for in a classic example of this stuff is just a really rich foamy head, particularly because it does have, or oftentimes it is going to have that wheat in there. That wheat is going to give it a bunch of foam and let it just sit in there. The color wise, we're looking for a yellow to gold, and this one definitely fits the bill. It's kind of like a lighter gold color. It should be clear. It can be a little bit hazy. Again, we've got protein. Protein can add those hazy elements. This one just happens to be pretty darn brilliantly clear. I think if I held this to the camera, you could probably see me wave to you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so this is what a Lichtenhainer can look like, but there is a bit of variation. So it's hard enough to find. Just enjoy it and not worry too much about it. But let's talk more importantly about the aroma while I do some more research.
So this is not a dedicated Rausch beer, which is a different style of smoked beer, but
Yeah.
it has smoke as a major component. And so aroma-wise, you are looking for that smoky aroma. The guidelines talk about the remnants of an old fire, not a greasy smoke. I love that. Imagine you're camping, Jeremy, and you wake up the next morning after you hung out all night drinking these beers around the campfire, and the next day you hug your significant other who's wearing that same flannel shirt or jacket, and it's that essence of smoke that carried over. It's
Yeah.
poetic, nuanced, romantic, as opposed to bash you in the face too much. So that's what you're looking for. You could get a hint of, and again, the guidelines don't do a great job of paying attention to basic taste. You're not going to be able to smell sourness. You're going to get notes of indicative hints of sourness, right? The lactobacillus, the yogurt sourness, the lemonade essence of that lactobacillus. That you might smell those volatiles, but you won't smell physical sourness. But so you're looking for kind of essence of hints of that the beer has some lactobacillus in it. And then because it's an ale, medium, low fruity esters. It talks about apples and lemons. I love the notion of Myers lemons or lemon peel. And then you're going to get no hops. Like that's a big deal. There's not supposed to be hops in the aroma. That's not what you're really looking for. It's more about the smoke. It's more about the low esters, and then getting an essence of the grainy kind of potentially grainy malt from the wheat aspect as well.
Yeah, and a lot of that translates over to flavor. And so, classically, I always go malt on down the line. We're looking for a kind of a low wheat character. The malt, the whole malt experience is just a platform, is just a foundation. This is not what this beer is about. But we will get that light wheat character. It can just kind of give you a sense of uh, of wet dough next to the pizza oven. A wood fired pizza oven is kind of gives you a similar sense. And along with that wheat, you do get a little bit of a lemony flavor, which is probably going to be trampled all over by the actual sourness. But that's something that we can look for as well. Just might just potentiate itself. I'm not looking for hop flavor at all. There should be like, if very low, if any hop flavor, and the bitterness should be there just for a little bit of balance, but it is not about the hops. It is not about the bitterness. What it is about is this complex, uh, moderately high, quite high fruity flavor, lemons, green apples. It is, this is where we are going to start tasting sourness, but it's not just sour for sour sake. Now we're getting into what makes it sour, like the lemons and green apples. We're looking at kind of a clean lactic sourness. Lactic is really reminiscent of like yogurt, where it's a clean sour, not a balsamic kind of thing. But it should not be funky. It should not be. It should not give you flavors of a rodeo or barn animals or anything like that. Um, but the smoke. Let's talk about more about the smoke that comes through. And you described it really, really, really well. But what it made me think about is you can have barbecue, smoked jerky, smoked salmon, smoked whatever, and that is an incredible flavor. What this reminds me of, however, is there are people who, when they're smoking something, they can reroute that smoke into like a cooler type of thing, and they can basically what is called as cold smoking. And I've had salads with tomatoes and grapes that have been cold smoked, and to me, this is like that cold smoke flavor where you get the flavor, the reminiscent of stuff like that romantic, cuddling with your person who was sitting around the campfire last night. You get this clean, dry hint of prominent smoke. It's kind of a difficult thing to describe, but if you've ever had anything cold smoked, this is it. This is the Lichtenhainer right there. But throughout the experience, and particularly in the finish, it's that smoke and that acidity that are that are that are prominent, and they're dancing through the entire palate experience, holding hands and skipping, and that's really what this flavor is going to do. Uh, I'll finish my analogies with there. Julia, let's talk about mouthfeel.
Mouthfeel ties to that sense of lactobacillus or acidity. So the style guidelines even say tingly acidity, right? So you're
Mm,
looking for that mouth-watering kind of tickle the tongue in the nasal passages type of acidity. That high carbonation is important because this is a very sessionable beer. High carbonation sessionable beers are where beers can shine if done right. It is, I think, akin to having a champagne, right? High
yes.
carbonation can be so well delivered when you ferment malted barley. Like I'm just going to say that hands down. So tight
Yeah.
acidity, tingly acidity, high carbonation, and then medium to light body. So it's not going to be very heavy or big weight on the tongue.
You know what? Thank you. You just conjured a new nickname for this beer for me. I'm going to start calling this rodeo champagne. That's
That's
exactly.
a
That's
great name.
exactly.
Oh
That's
my God, it sounds
exactly
like
what
the
this beer.
brand name that somebody should steal and start
I
making this.
know. I know.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay me for the name. Just send me a six
Rodeo.
pack of it, and I'll
Way
be
to go,
happy.
Jeremy.
Rodeo champagne.
Way to go.
Um, and so when we compare the style, granted, we're going to compare this with some of the smoke beers. We're going to compare this with the sours. So let's talk about sours first. If we're talking about clean lactic sours, so we're going to remove Goose and Lambic. We're going to remove the Flanders Red and Browns from that category. We're talking about this beer compared to Gosa and Berliner Weiss and Katharina sours. Uh, Gosa, it all has that clean lactic sour. Gosa has more salt and coriander. Berliner Weiss is exceptionally tart. Usually has a syrup added to it. Katharina sours like that Berliner Weiss, but with fruit in it. This one is going to be just like those, but goes into smoke. And then it serves as that bridge into the smoke beer. So it's not quite like the Rauch Märzen or Rauch Helles, which is really campfire, fatty, hammy, meaty. This really gets into that clean smoke that we talked about. And there's really only one other beer that has this beautiful clean smoke that we'll talk about in another Stylecast, the Polish Grodzickie. And that is and we'll talk about more, but that is an oak smoked beer, a very, very clean smoke, like the cold smoke experience. And so this is very similar to that from the smokiness. So if we had to compare this, it really is as if a a Gosa that did not have any coriander or salt, if a Gosa and a Grodziskia had a baby, it would be the Lichtenhainer. And that's kind of where this goes to for me.
I always love when you have the beer styles date each other. And have
Yes.
babies. It's perfect.
Yes.
Well,
Everyone wins when we have a new style.
yeah, totally nailed it. And then what's interesting in the style guidelines for commercial examples, I think historical beer, that's the category that we're in the BJCP guidelines. When you look at them, there's usually the least amount of commercial beer examples than any other style that I think BJCP does. There's only two, kind of just like Kentucky Common and others listed. So I wish we could find it. Live Oak Brewing has a Lichtenhainer, which is really exciting. Live Oak out of Texas. And then I am going to, Jeremy, can you help me with pronunciation on
Yes, the Wollnitzer.
Thank you.
Weissbier.
With the umlaut. Yes, Weissbier.
The
And
umlaut.
so that's an emphasis on the wheat. So, right, we've got a historical version from probably central Germany that really is emphasizing the wheat as much as the smoked barley. And I would love to get my hands on one of those one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in fact, I'd love to taste one of these fresh.
Yes.
Other than the one that I had in Bend, the one I opened today is actually from Matchless in Washington. I love this name, the Marmorated Toast.
Nice.
But I have been sitting on this bottle for a little over 2 years in anticipation of this episode.
Wow.
So this may be a little bit older than it ought to be. But for that, I say you're welcome, because I sat on this for way, way, way too long. I've been dying to open this for years now. So here we are. You guys got a front row seat of it. So let's talk about the vital stats. From a gravity standpoint, if we're brewing this at home or commercially, these are not particularly strong beers. They're kind of like session to lower average beer. So gravity-wise, we're looking at 1032 to 1040. That's really not that much. If we're talking about original Plato, that's 8 to 10. That's really not that much. And after it attenuates down with that clean lactobacillus and that ale yeast, because there's both in there, right? With that final gravity, we're going to end up at 1004 to 1008. That is a dry, clean beer. This is refreshing and satisfying. For the final Plato, we're looking at 1 to 2. What all of that's going to translate into ABV, and that we're looking at 3.5 to 4.7. For those of you who are studying to memorize this stuff for a test, 3.5 to 4.5, easy. Just keep it simple. IBUs, we talked about this before. There's no hop flavor, no hop aroma, and very, very light bitterness, if at all. We're talking about IBUs from 5 to 12. If you want to memorize it, it's 10 or under, just for simplicity. Now, color-wise, we're looking at kind of that yellow to gold flavor, yellow to gold color, where the SRM is going to be 3 to 6. I would not shake a stick if someone said, well, that's actually 3 to 8. Great, I agree with you. If we're talking European Brewery Convention, that'd be in the ballpark of 6 to 12. This is not a big beer. It's very easy drinking. It's very refreshing. I really hope more people can find this. More people will brew this and enjoy the heck out of it. It is not an everyday beer. I'm not going to say that it is, but it is exceptional, and we should drink more of these. But speaking of, let's talk about glass and temp.
Yes, absolutely. And as Jeremy's talking and holding up his glass, I'm thinking about the bitterness. And another way, less than 10, is it's just there for preservative aspect. You have added hops to this just to give it more a bump of shelf life, right? Safety, a little bit more. Nothing's fully safe. Things will age and stall and drop off a shelf of flavor for sure. I've had that happen a lot when you have aged beers. But not a bitterness beer at all, or hop centric. So glassware, I mean, I love the glass that you have. I don't even know what that style would be called. It's footed and stemmed.
It's a stemmed Pilsner glass.
Yeah. So a Pilsner glass would be great. Let's put this in anything that helps you throw these back and drink a lot of them. 3.5 to 4.7% ABV. we don't care, right? We're
Just get it
ready.
to my lips.
Exactly. We're ready to kind of pound these and slam them back until you really are relaxed and shouldn't drink anymore and, keep that in check. But so I
Yeah.
think glassware, Willy Becker, or that kind of stem-footed Pilsner glasses is where I'd have it. And absolutely cold, right? The more
Yeah.
sessionable something is, the lighter in ABV, the colder I tend to want it. So that's why I would want it straight out of the refrigerator cold and no reason to let it warm up. By the time it's warmed up, you should already be done with it and want your second one.
And as it warms up, I'm actually kind of concerned about what the smoke flavor will do if it gets a little too warm.
Huge
So,
point.
and from in the name of science, I kind of want to find out, and I'll try it with this one. But typically, it's like I don't want it to turn hammy or meaty. I want it to be clean, cold, refreshing for this particular beer style.
Yeah. Well said.
So when it comes to pairing, that first time I actually tasted that Lichtenhainer in Bend, Oregon, I happened to order basically a grown up grilled cheese, and so you had this beautiful sourdough bread with that was kind of crusted with butter and cheese, multiple different types of cheeses. This is not for your finicky 10-year-old. This is for the adult with a palate who's reminiscing, and this was that type of grilled cheese. And I got to tell you, Julia, that Lichtenhainer and that grown up grilled cheese was heaven. I mean, I seriously, I had a moment. It was incredible.
Well, and the wheat in the beer would marry with the wheat in the bread, right? I mean, there's just so
Yeah,
many synergies there. And then cheese, depending on how intense, it's probably a mild, intense cheese that you had, is going to do so well with smoke. What comes to mind for
yeah,
me is smoked Gouda, right? It's not a very intense cheese, but it has some complexity and character. I would like it with sliced smoked Gouda and apples. There's one. The apples are going to marry, have some citric acid from the apples, fall into the lactobacillus in this beer. Also, in terms of kind of trying to play off the smoke, it could be a total train wreck. I admit that. I haven't tried it, but I love how you describe that cold smoke. And have you ever had smoked salmon? That's what they're doing,
yes,
right? Smoked salmon
yeah,
is an example, perfect example of cold smoking in action. And so trying this with a little bit of smoked salmon and maybe even some melted Gouda on some kind of soda crackers with the wheat base, as the flour for those crackers. That's what I want to try. And it's probably going to be great. If it's not great, take the salmon out, ditch it, and just go with the cheese and crackers.
yeah. I think for me, just using this as a contrast, anything savory, a sausage, anything like that. Granted, fish tacos. This would be because it is acidic, it is refreshing, but that smoke just kind of conjures of like we just cooked the fish on the beach type of thing. I would love this with like a creamy mushroom ragu pasta. And you and I were talking offline that I just came back from a trip to Mexico spearing tuna. And so I actually cooked some yellowfin tuna, and this would be amazing with that steaky
Nice.
fish. And I know this firsthand because I just had this fish yesterday and it was incredible. So doing something along those lines and just having fun with it, but just playing with the flavor profile and trying it, trying with the apples. If you have a cancellation effect, great, try something else. But this is a really fun beer to pair with, especially when the weather's kind of warm.
Hungry and thirsty. We end pretty much 50% of the shows me saying that. So hungry and thirsty as always. We just want to thank you all for listening, and hopefully this style will be in your repertoire and your actual experiential library instead of just conceptual. So brew one or go find one and drink one and listen to the show again. Keep in touch and let us know what you want us to cover further.
Yeah, perfect. Prost.
Thank you for listening to A Sense of Beer Style, the essential beer style training for those who want to lead in food and beverage. With advanced Cicerones, me, Julia,
And me, Jeremy.
Tune into the next episode as we continue exploring the world of beer styles and what to make of them. We encourage you to listen to the prepisodes to build your foundation and better understand beer styles.
And before the next episode, I'd like to ask you to review the show and let us know what you'd like featured in upcoming episodes. Until next time, here's to you and your sense of beer style. Thank you for listening. Cheers.